But I am not yet seeing McCain, so I apologize for anyone that was sent here for John McCain. We should be seeing him any moment. He's doing a meet and greet. Let's take a look at our Facebook page. I don't know if you saw this story. This was pretty upsetting to be notified about over the weekend. According to newly released documents, 22-year-old Maria Lopez drowned her twin toddlers because nobody loved them and nobody loved her. This is a horrific story we have been covering all weekend and now into the morning here on Fox 10 Phoenix. When that loads, we'll go take a look. Interesting, and this was posted an hour ago on our Facebook page. A social media campaign called #IStandWithCherish has been launched in support of the Gilbert mother who left her 2-month-old baby in a shopping cart outside of a grocery store for nearly an hour. Who do you stand with? Oh, I bet you're very opinionated on that in the chat room. I'd love to know what you think about that. That was the mother that left her child outside of a grocery store, and the mother's spoken too, and she'll talk to media. She's willing to talk to media. So she says that the people that reported her lied about the time, etc. So that's a very interesting story. Also, very well. It's an intense situation. It's hot outside in Phoenix, and you're never supposed to abandon your child. So I can only imagine what the chat room comments are. But I'm not seeing John McCain. We might dip into Ted Cruz for a few minutes until I can see.
Social Security, number one. For seniors, for those on Social Security or near retirement, there should be no changes whatsoever, 0 changes. We've made promises. People have ordered their financial affairs based on those promises. We need to honor those commitments. But for younger workers, I'm 44. It is hard to find someone, my generation, who thinks Social Security will be there for us. That actually presents a remarkable opportunity for constructive reform. Because there are 3 reforms we can do. Number one, gradually increase the retirement age for Social Security for younger workers. When FDR signed Social Security into law, the retirement age was 65. Anyone know life expectancy at the time? 62. It was actually designed to be at the very tail end of life. Today, average life expectancy is north of 78. We need to gradually increase the retirement age for younger workers where you have time to plan on it and you know what's coming. Secondly, we need to change the rate of growth of benefits so that they match inflation rather than exceeding inflation. Those 2 changes in and of themselves bring Social Security into solvency. But the 3rd change, and this is critical, for younger workers, we need to allow younger workers to keep a portion of their tax payments in a personal account that they own, that they control, and that they can pass on to their kids and grandkids. That is responsible reform. And if I'm elected president, what I intend to do is work to lead and try to bring people together, solving these problems, not engage in the partisan divisive battles that has characterized the current administration, but instead focus on the shared values and objectives. We need to solve these problems, not talk about them, solve them. And that is very much my focus, and I want to just close with this. This is a gathering of leaders in the legislature, leaders in the business community, who have earned respect here in the state of New Hampshire. We are building a grassroots campaign from the people, and I am here very much to ask for your support. I ask you to join us. If we stand together from the grassroots, from the people. We can get it done. If you think of the last time America broke the Washington cartel, I would suggest it was 1980. It was the Reagan Revolution. And the way it happened is Reagan took the case to the American people. The American people rose up in incredible numbers and turned this country around. It's the only force strong enough to break the Washington cartel. We have an amazing team on the ground here in New Hampshire. Many of the folks here are already with us, but the rest of you, I would ask, please join us. We're seeing the old Reagan coalition coming back together. We're seeing conservatives and evangelicals and libertarians and Tea Party activists. We're seeing young people and Hispanics and African Americans and women and Reagan Democrats. That's how we win. It's how we win the primary in New Hampshire, and it's also how we win the general election in New Hampshire, and how we turn this country around nationwide. Thank you.
Thank you for your service. Thank you for stepping up to the plate. Thank you for being here today. And just so you know, ladies and gentlemen, the senator bought you lunch today. So we live in the greatest state, in the greatest country on earth. Thank you for being here today. Please stay tuned. We'll be having more business roundtables coming up in the future. Thank you.
It's good to see you.
And I actually have footage from right before we cut to him, this town hall, and he just bought everybody lunch. I'm a little jealous. But I have footage from earlier in this town hall, so I think I'm about to cut to that, while, again, I wait to see if I can get John McCain. Hopefully I can. I was just as excited about it as you were. But until then, I have footage from Senator Ted Cruz's event that we just cut from right before we went to him.
Father Raphael fled the United States after being tortured and imprisoned in Cuba. He attended the University of Texas and then started a small business in the oil and gas industry. Ted's father is a pastor in Dallas. Growing up, his father would often say to him, "When we faced oppression in Cuba, I had a place to flee to. If we lose our freedom here, where do we go?" Ted has been a tireless fighter for liberty his entire life because his family knows what it's like to lose it. As Solicitor General for the state of Texas and in private practice, Ted authored more than 80 U.S. Supreme Court briefs and argued 43 oral arguments, including 9 before the U.S. Supreme Court. In the U.S. Senate, Ted has led the fight to repeal the Affordable Care Act, authoring the Obamacare Repeal Act was his first piece of legislation. Ted has also been a fight against regulating the internet as a public utility.
Sounds like she's away from the mic. Give it a minute. Hopefully we will cut to Ted on the microphone.
I got 3 pages of a bio, but I'm not going to read all 3 of it. But the list of Ted's accomplishments is quite long, and we appreciate how hard he works for us in the U.S. Senate. Ted leads wife Heidi, their 2 daughters, Caroline and Catherine, and his entire family believe they have been blessed to live the American dream. The idea that anyone, through hard work and determination, can achieve anything. Senator
Thank you very much, Lori, for welcoming me here. Thank you, everyone, for coming out. And it is great to be here. Thank you for taking the time. Lori mentioned our 2 little girls, Caroline and Catherine. Caroline is 7, Catherine is 4. They are the love of our lives. Now, every one of you knows, we're parents, that God makes every child very, very different. Our daughter, Caroline, is the cynic. She's a skeptic. Nothing Daddy has done in the Senate has impressed her at all. After a month on the campaign trail, I came back from the road. She was sitting at the breakfast table. She had her arms crossed. She said, "Okay, Daddy, how many states have you done?" That would be Caroline. I'm reminded a few years back when Caroline was just 3 years old, and her sister Catherine was a baby. And we were down vacationing. We were at the beach with some friends that had little girls as well. And Caroline wanted to go in the car. with her friends. There wasn't room. And Caroline proceeded to fall to the ground, begin kicking and screaming and crying and throwing a fit. We had a situation. And I'm not sorry.
Sounds like some technical difficulties. I apologize. Hopefully we'll be getting the audio back. Seems in and out.
Precious prayer of a child.
Check.
But in those words, it sums up where we are right now. Our country is in a crisis. This isn't a typical time in politics.
Give me 2 seconds. I think I see him on our live feed as well. Let's see if this is him. We have audio here.
I've tried to do in the Senate more than anything else. We've got to turn this country around for three simple things. Number one, bringing back jobs.
And audio's there, but I cannot hear him, so I'm going to cut back to the video from earlier. Here we go.
It is now or never. We are bankrupting our kids and grandkids. Our constitutional rights are under assault from Washington like never before. And America has receded from leadership in the world, and it has made the world much, much more dangerous. I think this next election, if we continue going down this road, we risk doing irreparable damage to the greatest country in the history of the world. Today, for the first time in history, a majority of Americans believe that our kids will have a worse life than we did. 65%. That has never been the case in the history of this country until right now. Maybe the most un-American idea you can think of. I think the central issue in this next election will be reigniting the promise of America. Getting back to that fundamental ideal that our kids will have a better life than we did. And their kids will have a better life than they did. How do we do it? 3 common sense principles. Number 1, we bring back jobs and growth and opportunity. This is an alliance that is focused on jobs and growth. With growth, we can do all of it. Without growth, we can't do any of it. Now, how do you get growth? What the men and women here understand is growth doesn't come from government. It comes from the private sector. It comes from entrepreneurs putting capital at risk to meet a need. But government sure can screw it up. It's very good at it. And the 2 most effective levers for economic growth are tax reform and regulatory reform. Folks here understand cause and effect. Every time we pursued out-of-control spending and taxes and debt and regulation, the result has been economic stagnation and misery and malaise. And every time we pursued tax reform and reg reform, in the 1920s under Calvin Coolidge, in the 1960s under JFK, and in the 1980s under Ronald Reagan, the result has been incredible economic growth. Tax reform. We spend right now about $500 billion on tax compliance. On lawyers and accountants, all dead weight loss. That's about the expense of our entire military. And as we like to say in Texas, it doesn't produce a single truck or tortilla. I think the best tax reform is we need to adopt a simple flat tax. So that every American can fill out his or her taxes on a postcard. And when we do that, we should abolish the IRS.
Amen.
There are about 90,000 employees at the IRS. We need to padlock that building. Take all 90,000, put them down on our southern border. Now, to our friends in the media, I say that...
No, I have to interrupt because I am getting my live feed of John McCain. I apologize for anybody invested in Ted Cruz. We'll go back to Ted Cruz after John McCain. This is live John McCain at Southwest. Well, there we go.
Europe and the United States, and it sometimes when we talk about these things in kind of an objective view, it has one effect.
Oh, perhaps I don't have John McCain. Briefly lost him. That's fine. We'll just head back over to Ted Cruz.
People want to do things to help humanity, and then it ends up like that. It should offend all of us. It should offend every one of us. And unfortunately, this president and this administration does not have a strategy to defeat ISIS. And so the fighting will go on. There's recently a story in the New York Times that maybe some of the intelligence information has been slanted in order to make things look better than they actually do. But the other aspect of it is, finally, before I leave the ISIS issue, is that if suppose right now about 2,000 young men and a few young women are going into Iraq and Syria, mostly European, but from all over the world, from as far away as Australia. Suppose that only 1% of that 2,000 a month that is flowing into into Iraq and Syria leave and want to commit an attack on the United States of America. Well, my friends, that's a lot of people. And I'm sure you noticed we even had an arrest here in Arizona just the other day. And all of us celebrated, and we're so proud of our Americans that disarmed that guy on the train. And we can't be more proud of those individuals, those brave Americans. But also it raises the question that all of us should be asking, how did that guy get on that train with AK-47s loaded down with ammunition? How did that happen? Wouldn't it, in a way, just fortunate that we had those Americans there to disarm him? And what would have happened if we hadn't? So we've got those challenges as well. Let me just say a little bit about our economy. It's kind of stumbling along. In Arizona, it's starting to get better. We were hardest hit. We were one of 2 or 3 states that were hardest hit the 2008 collapse. We have been coming back. Southern Arizona is not doing nearly as well as the Valley is, and we need more trade with Mexico, and we need a highway called I-11 that would start at the Mexico border and come up through Tucson, Phoenix, Las Vegas, and over. We need to have a better situation as far as border control is concerned. And by the way, we can control our border, and we can do it with technology as well as through people. We developed technology in Iraq. General Petraeus developed technology in Iraq where you can not only detect people with a radar, but you can track them back to where they came from. So with drones and radars and additional people, we can control our border. It's not under control right now, but we also need to have the flow of goods and services back and forth between the United States, Arizona, and Mexico. I found out the other day that Mexico does more business with Arizona than it does with Spain. And the Mexican government views Arizona as a great place for them to do business. So we are living in very interesting times. As far as the presidential campaign is concerned, I am be glad to answer any questions or comments you might have, but at the moment I'd like to have a Trump-free moment. But I'd also like to mention to you why I am optimistic about the future of this country. First of all, this country, the United States of America, for the first time, is now energy independent. We are now have this drop in the price of oil to a large degree because the United States of America, thanks to fracking, is now energy independent. Now, there's not many people in this room that remember the 1970s when OPEC led by the Saudis, cut off the flow of oil, and people in Arizona were spending hours in gas lines waiting to fill up their gas tanks. That can't happen again. That can never happen again. We are free now of our dependency on Middle Eastern energy. Now, the world is not free, but the United States of America is, and if we do the right thing, we'll be exporting energy to countries. Particularly, I would hope that we could take the natural gas that's being flared up in the North Dakota oil fields and get it to Ukraine so that they can be independent of Vladimir Putin's oil supply. So that's a huge thing. And everybody in this room, including me, has saved money compared to a year ago when the price of a gallon of gas was at least twice what it is today. So average consumers have gotten more money in their pockets to spend on other things, including tickets on Southwest Airlines to Aruba or Cabo or wherever they want to go. But second of all is the fact that manufacturing jobs are now being created in the United States. Not at the number we want, but certainly a dramatic change. A lot of that has to do with technology. About 6 months ago, I went out to Scottsdale, Arizona, to the opening of a plant that makes windows. And the reason why I went there, I was invited. Main reason why I went is because it wasn't an American company. It was a Belgian company based in Brussels, Belgium. And I went, and it was the grand opening, and it wasn't a big deal. I think it was like 100 employees. But I met the woman who was the CEO, and I said to her, I said, why did you, a Belgian-based company, pick Scottsdale, Arizona? And she said, we looked over in the entire world, and we thought Scottsdale, Arizona was the best place for us to establish a facility, hire people, and it wasn't just because of the taxes, but because of the overall lifestyle. I'd like to mention the temperature was about 85 that day, but anyway, and so we have that attraction. Finally, my friends, the only other thing I want to mention, and I gave it to my associate, and that is this thing that we call the iPhone. This is an incredible change in everybody's lives and everybody's lifestyle. It is a way of getting information and knowledge, and therefore better equip people to meet the challenges of their lives than anything that's happened since the invention of the printing press. I mean, it is phenomenal what is going on. And it may be manufactured in China, but it was invented here. And every one of these changes, my wife makes me buy a new one every goddamn 6 months or so. Why, I do not know, but I am forced to, I guess to be socially acceptable, I don't know. They may be made in China, but all of it comes from here in the United States. Every one of these changes, it's dramatic. About 2 months ago, I went over to Venice, California. I don't usually hang out there and work out, and I went to a place that some of you, particularly younger ones, are very familiar with, called Snapchat. Snapchat? Okay, I walked into this place because I was going to do a town hall meeting and talk to the employees. Guy meets me at the door, T-shirt, Levi's, 25 years old. He's the CEO. He just turned down $4 billion for his company. I went in and talked to these employees. There wasn't a one of them over age 30. If there was, they were probably social outcasts. But so it's really remarkable what is taking place. And I think we should be most proud, because only in America do we have this kind of environment where a young person can go to college, or even in many cases drop out of college and start this kind of information technology that is literally changing the world. So I am optimistic in the long run. In the short term, we are in greater danger than we've ever been since the end of World War II, and we need the leadership that will effectively address it. I want to thank all of you again, and I really appreciate the opportunity to be in Group A. Group A is my favorite place in America to be. Group D is not my favorite place, especially when I have to Anyway, middle seats are fun. But so I thank all of you for being here and all the great work you do, and I'd like to respond to any questions or comments that you might have. Thank you very much. Thank you. By the way, we used to call it Group 1. Now we call it Group A, isn't that? Yeah, that's a huge change. You end up in the same middle seat. But questions or comments?
Senator?
Yes.
We met earlier. I'm Gary Clausen. Among other things, I'm also an A4 driver.
Thank you.
And
Your landings match the number of takeoffs, unlike me. There you go. Yeah.
This is more two thank yous rather than questions. First off, as a naval aviator, I'm glad to see you're stepping into the breach one more time. We need your leadership. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Secondly, I'm a Brophy grad. Your family, and you in particular, have been very kind to my alma mater. Thank you, sir.
In fact, we've almost gone broke. They have, the thing, I love Catholics. They have the best way of squeezing money out of you than yeah, it's a wonderful school, it really is. And thanks for serving. And for those of you that don't know, the A4 Skyhawk was a wonderful little airplane that was around for many, many years, probably one of the longest of any, because it was such an excellent air-to-ground aircraft, and a lot of us really enjoyed flying it. I flew other airplanes, as you probably did, but the little A4 was most fun of any. Any other questions or comments? Yes?
Wondering if you could comment on the growing movement that seems to be centered here in Arizona with a man named John McCain. I don't know if you've heard of him, but it's a movement that's growing, that's launching a global fight to end Islam, and they see no distinction between ISIS and your average citizen that's peaceful, and it's starting a lot of hate and a lot of animosity.
I am not familiar with that organization, but I will say unequivocally, without a doubt, that a religion of Islam and the Koran is an honorable and decent a religion that has many of the tenets that our Christian religion has. And as I said earlier before, this ISIS have taken an honorable religion and perverted it into a form of Islam that has nothing to do with the reality of what the religion and faith is all about. And you can ask any Muslim cleric and they will tell you the same thing. And that, frankly, is one of the horrible things about ISIS, is because they have taken an honorable religion and turned it into one of the most modern forms of evil that we have encountered in this world, certainly in my lifetime.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just wondering, though, as the senator from Arizona, where this movement seems to be really
Frankly, I think most citizens of Arizona and this country recognize that Islam is an honorable religion and one that we respect. So frankly, I think I keep up with everything that goes on. I had not heard of this movement, and I usually hear. Anyway, so thanks. Yeah, sir.
Thanks, Sir. Chip Hancock with Southwest Pilots. Thank you for your service. I'm not an Air Force pilot, so I want to keep us balanced here. But I appreciate that. I appreciate that candid and sobering update on the world state, and especially your leadership in the Senate during this tumultuous time. But I'm just curious on a different note. Chairman Schuster over the House side has proposed possibly the privatization or public-private partnership of aircraft control. Just curious to see how the Senate side is viewing that, or what you think about that.
The Senate side is not doing much, but in the past, I have seen public-private partnerships in some areas of the public sector, and it's usually worked out pretty well. And what usually is the best way to do it is some kind of pilot program to see how it works. Look, I'm glad I don't work at the FAA. I mean, it's bad enough having a 12% approval rating members of Congress. Anybody here in the 12% that approves of Congress, please raise your hand. I'd like to know where the hell you've been. Anyway, by the way, I went through Sky Harbor Airport just the other day coming back, and a guy ran up to me and said, "Hey," he said, "anybody ever tell you look a lot like Senator John McCain?" I said, "Yeah." He said, "Doesn't it sometimes make you mad as heck?" So anyway, I think where we can get the private sector into government bureaucracies that have the motivation that the private sector has is always a good idea. And by the way, you also know better, far better than I do, because you live with it every day. Modernization of the air traffic control system is an absolute must. If you believe that our economy is improving, and I do believe, all too slowly, but it's improving, then there's going to be more people that want to get on airliners and go around the country and the world, and we're going to have an overtaxed air traffic control system. And you can see examples of that from time to time, a breakdown in the system in the New York Center, or one of those places. The other day we had on the East Coast the computer system broke down, and they were having to do it on paper, right? I don't know if you were involved in that, but it bollocksed up the whole East Coast for a number of hours. So we're going to have to keep up. And the interesting thing is, I'm sure that with our advances in computers all the time, that technology could dramatically improve not only air traffic control system, but aircraft themselves. So thank you for the question or comment. Yes, sir.
Yes, you mentioned the trade between Mexico and the U.S., and I believe Open Skies is up for a vote with the Mexican Senate here to possibly become effect January 2016. Just wondering if you can speak to that and potential impact between Phoenix and Mexico, if they may deregulate that even further.
If they deregulate the airline industry, you're going to see a huge jump in air traffic between the United States and Mexico. All of us here in this room have probably traveled at one time or another to some part of Mexico. Let's face it, Hispanic culture is part of Arizona. That's what we celebrate, whether it be the food, whether it be the music, whether it be all of the other aspects of the Hispanic culture that has enriched our state. Also, the fastest growing part of our population, obviously, is the Hispanic population. And all of us want to go back and forth to some of the really beautiful parts of Mexico, whether it be Cabo, where the weather is and the beaches is so wonderful, and also from other parts. So I see it as a step forward. The government of Mexico is very forward-leaning in a number of areas. There's been a recent scandal about the president's wife in a house that I'm not too familiar with, but overall they have done some real significant deregulation, including that of the telecommunications industry, which for the first time has opened it up for competition. I probably told you more than you ever wanted to hear, but I'm very optimistic about Mexico. But I can tell you, down at the port of Nogales, Mariposa Crossing, sometimes it takes 45 minutes to an hour to get across from one side of the border to the other. Over in Texas, Governor Perry, former governor, one of his priorities was improving those ports of entry, and a lot of that traffic now is headed towards the Texas border rather than the Arizona-Mexico border, and it makes a lot more sense to go across the Arizona border because California is one of the major destinations for all these goods and services. Our future, in my view, is inextricably tied in many respects, particularly our economy, to a large degree, on our relations with Mexico. And we should be proud of that. Any moment. Yes, sir.
Sir, my name is Jay Paulus. As a former Air Force officer, first of all, thank you for your service in the Navy, in Hanoi, and your service in Congress in the U.S. One of my concerns is the sequestration of the defense budget. Is there any near-term remedy to that, or are we just going to have to wait till a new administration, or what are your views on that?
America, I'm a very proud Republican. Republicans are just as guilty as Democrats on sequestration. It is decimating our military, our Chief of Staff of the United States Army, who retired last week, made very dire statements about our ability to defend the nation. It's a meat axe, and it's disgraceful, and it's unacceptable. And unless we repeal it, we're not going to, in these most dangerous times, if you accept the words of those people as I start out my remarks, we're not going to be capable of adequately defending the nation. What does that mean? Does it mean we're going to get beat by somebody? No, but it means it will make it a lot harder to defeat an enemy. History is replete of the United States of America not being ready to fight. After World War II, the Korean War broke out, and it was a massacre at first because we weren't ready to fight. After Vietnam, we were not ready to fight, and we are not now in some respects. So my highest priority, frankly, is to get rid of sequestration. And finally, at the same time, we've got to eliminate this waste and cost overruns that characterize our defense acquisition system, which many times embarrasses me, that we have these very terrible cost overruns. Listen, if Southwest Airlines ran on the same basis the Pentagon, you'd be out of business day after tomorrow, I promise you. And so we've got to fix that part of it as well. Yes, another question.
Recently, you've called the videos that came out about Planned Parenthood deplorable and disgusting, and that they show this horrible underside. Wondering if you could comment, though, on the independent forensic report that came out last week that said even the unedited videos have been edited at least 42 times, and you cannot make any determinations about what they actually say,
Well,
and that they wouldn't be admittable in a court of law.
I don't know who the outfit is that made that assessment, but I saw the videos myself. Please, give me a break. I mean, when a person is making some of the comments that are clearly there on the videos, no matter how they were edited, they're still disgraceful in my view. Sir.
Thank you for your service, and thank you for being here, Senator. My question is in regard to Cuba. So the airline industry is closely monitoring developments. People are excited about the prospect to travel to Cuba. Some of our competitors have already announced that they intend to serve the market. What are some of the deeper ramifications associated with normalizing relations in Cuba from your perspective?
Well, I'm reminded of the words of Vladimir Ilyich Lenin, who once said the capitalists are going to hang themselves and we'll sell them the rope to do it. There has been no reform that I know of in the Cuban government. There has been no relaxation of their human rights abuses. There has been no change. All that money that you're talking about, what does it go into? Government-owned industries. It's the government. It's Fidel Castro and Raul that are making all the money. And the human rights situation is still, in my view, unacceptable in Cuba. And let me just contrast that for you. I supported the normalization of relations with Vietnam, but we went through a long, many-year process, working in a bipartisan basis. I worked with President Clinton, and we demanded certain things from them. Empty out the re-education camps, stop a lot of the human rights abuses, a full accounting of those who are missing in action. There was a long list, laundry list, that we negotiated with them for 5 years. And then when we decided to normalize relations, President Clinton and I and John Kerry and others on a bipartisan basis stood and said, we're going to normalize relations. And it's been a success. What did this president do? He announced one day. He announced one day that we're going to have normal relations with Cuba. No changes in their human rights activities, no changes in the way their society is governed, and without any taint of bipartisanship or effort to reach out to our side to see if there weren't ways that we could work together on an issue of this significance. So all I can say is that they're not going to get the money from this Congress to open an embassy, I'll tell you that. And they shouldn't, in my view. So could I just say that I'm really happy to be here at Southwest, and could I also say that one of the things about riding in Southwest is you always have flight attendants who try to be amusing and entertaining, as you know. They aren't always, but they try, right? Some sing, some, others. So I guess I could end up by mentioning to you that in politics, which is not always fun, you try to entertain and you try to make people laugh, and sometimes that's with ethnic jokes. But there's only one ethnic joke that is allowed in American politics, and that is Irish jokes. It is not allowed to tell a Polish joke or an Italian joke or any other, only Irish jokes. And I have never known the reason for that, but that is political reality. So this story concerns a bar in Boston, Massachusetts, and there's one guy down at either end of the bar. The bar is empty. The guy walks down, sits down, the guy next to him at the bar and says, "Hey, where are you from?" He said, "I'm from Ireland." He says, "Really?" He said, "Well, let me buy you a drink." He said, "Well, okay, I'll buy you a drink. I'll buy you a drink." So they're buying each other drinks back and forth. The guy says, "Where are you from in Ireland?" He says, "I'm from Galway." He said, "I'm from Galway." "Really?" And so back and forth. And the guy said, "Where'd you go to high school?" He said, "I went to St. Mary's." He said, "You couldn't have gone to. I went to St. Mary's." "Well, let me buy you a drink." No, back and forth. The guy walks in the bar and sees all the commotion down at the end of the bar and says to the bartender, he said, "What's going on down there?" And the bartender said, "It's just the O'Reilly twins getting drunk again." Thank you very much for having me.
And we're going to transition back to Ted Cruz. This is earlier today. We just cut into this briefly to get through John McCain at Southwest, but we'll head back to Ted Cruz right now.
You know, a couple of years ago, I was out in West Texas, was talking to some folks there. I asked, what's the difference between regulators and locusts? I said, well, the thing is, you can't use pesticide on the regulators. And this old West Texas farmer, he leaned back, he said, "Want to bet?" And the most important regulatory reform is we need to repeal every word of Obamacare. We need to adopt common sense health care reform that makes health insurance personal and portable and affordable and keeps government from getting in between us and our doctors. The second key to reigniting the promise of America is we need to defend our constitutional rights. All of them. We need to defend free speech and especially religious liberty. We need to defend the Second Amendment, the right to keep and bear arms. When President Obama and Chuck Schumer and Harry Reid came after our right to keep and bear arms in 2013, I was proud to stand and help lead the fight to defeat that legislation on the floor of the Senate and to protect our Second Amendment rights. We need to defend the Fourth Amendment, our privacy. And that means the federal government has no business with our emails or phone calls from law-abiding citizens. And we need to defend the 10th Amendment. Or as President Obama calls it, the what? Yeah. The fundamental protection that says the powers not given to the federal government are reserved to the states and to the people. That means their core functions the federal government has no business sticking its nose into, and chief among them is education, and we need to repeal Common Core. And then the third key to reigniting the promise of America is we need to restore America's leadership in the world. For 6.5 years, America has receded. We've led from behind. And it's a manifest disaster. Our friends and allies no longer trust us. And our enemies no longer fear us. Instead of a president who boycotts Prime Minister Netanyahu, imagine America standing unapologetically alongside the nation of Israel. Imagine a commander-in-chief who stands up and says, "We will defeat radical Islamic terrorism." Imagine a commander-in-chief willing to utter the words, "radical Islamic terrorism." Imagine a president who stands up and says, "We're not going to send $100 billion to the Ayatollah Khamenei. And under no circumstances will Iran be allowed to acquire nuclear weapons." Now, some of y'all may be thinking, all of those are common sense. Live within your means. Don't bankrupt our kids and grandkids. Follow the Constitution. But can it happen? Can we get it done? You know, Scripture tells us there's nothing new under the sun. I think where we are today is very, very much like the late 1970s. I think the parallels are uncanny. The same failed domestic policy, the same misery, stagnation, and malaise. The same feckless and naive foreign policy. In fact, the exact same countries, Russia and Iran, openly laughing at and mocking the President of the United States. Now, why is it that analogy gives me so much hope and optimism?
We got out of it.
We know how the story ended.
What comes up next?
All across this country, there was a grassroots movement of millions of men and women who came together and became the Reagan Revolution. And it didn't come from Washington. Washington despised Ronald Reagan. By the way, if you see a candidate who Washington embraces, run and hide. It came from the American people that rose up and it turned this country around. We went from economic stagnation to booming growth. Millions lifted from poverty into prosperity and the American dream. We went from our hostages languishing in Iran to winning the Cold War and tearing the Berlin Wall to the ground. The reason I'm so optimistic is simple. The same thing is happening again. All across this country, people are waking up. You know, when we launched our campaign, the New York Times promptly opined, Cruz cannot win. Because the Washington elites despise him. I kind of thought that was the whole point of the campaign. Listen, if you think Washington is doing great, if you think we need to continue going in the same basic direction, just kind of fiddle around the edges, then I ain't your guy. On the other hand, if you think Washington is fundamentally broken, that there is a bipartisan corruption of career politicians in both parties who get in bed with lobbyists and special interests and grow and grow and grow government, and we need to bring power out of Washington and back to we the people, that is what this campaign is all about.
Yes.
Well, you know, the Times went on. They said, okay, maybe the grassroots are going to be with Cruz. But he ain't going to have any money. Because, you know, the Washington elites, they control all the money, and the lobbyists are all with other candidates who aren't going to rock the boat, who are going to keep that gravy train flowing. Well, just a few weeks ago, all of the campaigns filed their fundraising reports. Out of 17 Republican candidates, do you know which campaign raised the most hard money? We did. In just over 3 months, together, we raised over $14.3 million.
Nice.
Second place was Jeb Bush at $11.4 million. That's good stuff. Now, Lori, if I'd have told you 4 months ago we were going to outraise every candidate in the field, including outraising Jeb Bush by $3 million, you'd have said I was bark at the moon nuts. Amen. But do you know how we did that? That came from over 175,000 contributions in all 50 states. The average contribution was $68. We have one or more Cruz campaign donors in 55% of the zip codes in America. That is the power of the grassroots. By the way, I would note by contrast, so we had 175,000 contributions. The second place candidate, Jeb Bush, had 12,000. It's a 15-to-1 ratio. Our average contribution was $68. His average contribution was $926. That is the power of the grassroots. This campaign is a grassroots campaign from the people. I'm honored to be with you. I'm honored to have this conversation. And with that, I'm happy to answer or dodge any question you like.
We prefer answers, but thank you very much.
Yes, sir.
A couple of issues where, unfortunately, you have crawled into bed with Obama.
Okay.
Number one would be mass legal immigration. And number two would be the Trans-Pacific Partnership, the trade deal scam. I believe you support it. In fact, you and Paul Ryan wrote an op-ed in the Wall Street Journal saying that you wanted to give Obama a TPA, trade promotion authority, to go ahead and negotiate, continue on with the Trans-Pacific Partnership. That's a lousy bill. Jeff Sessions says it's a clunker. Whatever Jeff Sessions says goes. And as for immigration, it's quite simply true that if it wasn't for mass immigration, the 1965 Immigration Act, the Republicans might not have lost California forever. And it's also true that without mass immigration, we might never have had Obama. And that means we might never have had Obamacare.
Okay.
So
you
mass
have a question,
legal immigration is the issue that's demographically destroying the United States. But you support dramatic increases in mass immigration.
Let's hear what he has to support.
I don't think you can continue on trying to confuse the American people with the difference between illegal immigration and mass legal immigration. So why do you support mass legal immigration?
So I take it you're on the fence. All right, let's take those issues one at a time. You talked first about TPA and TPP, and then you talked about immigration, so let's do them one at a time. When it comes to TPA and TPP, you are right that I support free trade. Just like Ronald Reagan, I think it benefits America when we open foreign markets to our farmers, to our ranchers, to our manufacturers. 1 in 5 jobs in New Hampshire depends upon international trade. I started by saying my top priority is economic growth. Opening up foreign markets is a critical tool for economic growth. Now, when it came to TPA, I initially supported TPA because I support free trade. Ultimately, however, I voted against TPA. And I wrote a long op-ed in Breitbart laying out why I changed my vote. And I changed my vote for 2 reasons. Number one, I changed my vote because it became apparent that Republican leadership had cut a corrupt bargain, tying TPA to the reauthorization of the Export-Import Bank, a classic example of corporate welfare and cronyism. And I am leading the fight to end those billions of dollars of corporate welfare to a handful of giant corporations, and with that corrupt deal, I couldn't support TPA. The second reason that I changed my vote on TPA to no is because after the initial consideration, the text of the Trade and Services Agreement was made public on WikiLeaks. The administration had repeatedly maintained there was nothing concerning immigration in these trade agreements. Once the text of the Trade and Services Agreement became public, it was clear there were provisions explicitly governing immigration. And I told leadership I will not support it unless you pass my amendment and Jeff Sessions' amendment. You mentioned, Jeff, the two of us had amendments that we offered that said no trade agreement could impact immigration in any way, shape, or form. Leadership told us to go jump in a lake, so I voted no. So that's my record. Now, you also asked about the TPP. The TPP is a specific trade agreement in the Pacific. That's still being negotiated. I have not taken a public position on the TPP because I want to wait until it's negotiated to see the final text. I have a policy with regards to either treaties or statutes that I wait until I actually read it before taking a position. But what I can tell you... What I can tell you is that the TPP undermines American interests if it opens the door to changing our immigration laws. Or if it undermines our sovereignty, then I will oppose it. And I intend to look very specifically at what the terms of the agreement are. Now let's shift to the second piece of that, which is immigration. Now with regard to immigration, I think there's actually a lot of bipartisan agreement among the American people on a lot of issues on immigration. I think there's overwhelming bipartisan agreement, number one, that we have got to secure the borders.
Absolutely.
And stop illegal immigration. I think there is also considerable bipartisan agreement among the American people outside of Washington that we need to improve and streamline legal immigration. Now, you and I may disagree on that. That's fine. This is a democracy. We're entitled to disagree. My view on immigration is actually very simple. Illegal, bad. Legal, good.
Yeah, there you go.
And I agree again with Reagan, who said legal immigrants, those who wait in line and follow the rules and come here seeking the American dream, they are Americans by choice, and we should welcome and celebrate them. I would also note that when it comes to immigration, there is a sharp difference among the candidates who are running on the Republican side. On that stage in Cleveland, of the 10 candidates standing on that stage, a majority of the candidates there have publicly and vocally embraced amnesty. Now, today, when they're candidates, they all claim they opposed amnesty. But if you look at their history, a majority of those candidates have publicly supported amnesty. And I am the only candidate standing on that stage who has consistently opposed amnesty and who led the fight, standing shoulder to shoulder with Jeff Sessions, to stop Barack Obama and Harry Reid and Chuck Schumer and the establishment Republicans' massive amnesty program. I stood up and helped lead the fight to stop it. We killed it in Congress, and I would point out the other fine gentlemen standing on that debate stage, not a one of them was anywhere to be found leading the fight to stop amnesty. And so if you're focused on immigration, I think there's a big difference between my record and that of the other candidates running for president.
I think our welfare system has become the new plantation. And I think it's pathetic. And I think that we're sucking more people in, and the taxpayer can't burden this anymore. They can't. And how do we fix that?
So it's a great question. How do we fix our welfare program? And I'll tell you, even though I'm in Texas, it's gotten warm in here. So here, I'll just that is a great question. It's a very important question. You know, there is no doubt our welfare program is not working the way it should. And, you know, one of the simplest explanations of what we should be aiming for is that the social safety net should be a trampoline and not a hammock.
Yes. Yes.
The entire purpose of government assistance programs should be to get people off of government assistance programs. Now, everyone runs into hard times at some point in their life. But it is utterly destructive. You look at the Obama economy, one of the most tragic consequences is the millions of Americans who have been trapped in dependency. You're not doing anyone a favor. You know, I look at these issues from the perspective of my dad. My dad came from Cuba in 1957. He'd been imprisoned. He'd been tortured in Cuba. When he came to America, he was 18. He was washing dishes. He was making 50 cents an hour. Couldn't speak English. Now, I've said many times when my dad was a teenage immigrant washing dishes, thank God some well-meaning liberal didn't come put his arm around him.
Yeah, no kidding. Huh?
Say, Raphael, let me take care of you. Let me make you dependent on government. Let me give you a check every month. Let me sap your self-respect, your individual responsibility, your dignity. And by the way, while I'm at it, don't bother learning English. I respect your culture so much, I'm going to lock you out of the business and professional classes in this country. That would have been the most destructive thing anyone could have done to my father. I would have rather someone come by with a stick and broken his legs, because that would heal more rapidly than the damage to the human spirit. If you look at in public policy, one of the most successful public policy reforms we've seen in modern times is the 1990s welfare reform, where we put in place vigorous work requirements in just one of the federal welfare programs. And what happened? The left screamed and cried and yelled and said, you're going to throw thousands, millions of people into the street and cause them to suffer. Well, just about everything they predicted turned out to be false. Millions of people went off of welfare and got jobs, got work, began providing for their family. And there is a dignity, a self-respect when a mom, when a dad comes home and looks at their kids in the eyes and they're providing for their family. And we need to take the principles of welfare reform. The Obama administration has unilaterally gutted the work requirement in a lawless manner. But we need to expand the principles of welfare reform across the federal welfare programs, so that especially if you are an able-bodied adult, we will expect you to be working. We will help you find a job, but you are not going to be placed in a position of simply receiving a check in perpetuity. That, listen, it has a big impact on taxpayers and our budget, but that's not the most consequential impact. The most consequential impact is the damage it's doing to the people trapped in dependency. And I want us to work together to lift everyone who can to stand on their own feet and to have a fair chance at the American dream.
Yes. Your Justice Department.
And this is my second time pausing Ted. But you are as important as John McCain to me.
Wow.
Yes.
Kins?
This
now
is
that's
our
the
time.
type of compliment that I usually have to go fishing for. It doesn't usually just walk right up to me like that.
Hoon, how is your morning show? From what I saw, you did a phenomenal job. I love watching you.
Thank you. But now here's the thing. I'm as low as I can go, and I feel like my head is partially cut off. What do we have to do? There we go.
There you look so handsome.
Good. Now,
There you
but call me by my nickname. Call me Hooner.
Okay, Hoons.
Okay.
Hooner.
Hoons. So, Kins, who gave you that nickname, by the way?
You. I have a fun lower third. I put, tweet us your cup of coffee. I like to give them specific instructions.
Okay, no, that's good. I believe that we can use what in our business is called the lower third to more effective measures.
Well,
I really do.
love trying to encourage additional social media activity.
Yes, right.
And so just tweet us. Well, tweet us what? Tweet us your cup of coffee, because they probably have it in their hand right now.
Oh, so are you getting a couple yet?
Well, we
You
just threw it
started.
up there.
Oh, I see.
No, this is a special you and I project. This isn't a general tweet me your cup of coffee. This is a Kinsey and Hooner.
Okay.
So now
I like it.
Oh, good.
And you've
I'm
got
glad.
your monster drink, and
I
I'm
do.
actually already through the caffeinated portion of my day. I have this beat up old Arizona Diamondbacks cup, still trying to represent, and I'm into the ice water situation. But then
You're staying hydrated.
I get up at 3. So.
And you're staying hydrated, and that's really important. It's hot outside sometimes.
Correct. And then the other thing is, there's no sense if you're me and you're getting up at 3 and you're contemplating, this is the time of day I contemplate, okay, am I going to take a nap? And so if you're drinking caffeine at 11 o'clock...
This is the best time to have grandbabies for you, too, because then you can nap together.
That's so true. Did you see the...
I saw that
you saw the
sweet
pic?
picture. I saw that sweet picture of you guys on the beach.
Yes.
Aw.
Right, I think that was on my Insta. I'll share it with
I
everybody.
saw it on
body.
F-Book.
Oh, did you?
But,
okay.
yeah.
Sometimes I'll post a
Sometimes
both
you
here.
dubs post.
Let me see where that one is, just so people don't feel left out.
No, I don't want to exclude anyone.
Of course.
Look at how sweet
That's me and my
that
little
is.
buddy.
That's low.
Now, I usually don't go shirtless.
But it's Monday.
Yeah.
Might as
that's
well.
For sure. And little Mason, we were on vacay not
I
too
can
long
tell that
ago.
Mason loves you.
I hope he does. I love him. So, now it's interesting, Kens. You and I were just talking about our caffeinated schedule. So I see you doing a Monster drink.
Because, usually I'm barely awake at this hour. This is when I'm putting on my face to come in at noon.
Right, yeah. But my question is, do you nap?
I love naps.
Do you love naps?
They're my favorite
There's a
thing.
really interesting news story out there today about the value of a nap and the supposed value that is not there.
Whoa. Oh, here we go. Great segue. Let's tell me about this.
Okay. So this study says, and maybe I can look up a little bit more on it right now, but the bottom line to it is, if you nap longer than about an hour, you're doing more harm than good.
Oh, no.
Is what the study says.
That I believe.
I don't know about you guys in the chat box, but honestly, when I take a nap, I feel like it's a success.
Yeah.
If I got at least 2 hours in.
Oh, yeah. No,
Do you
that's
too?
a good day.
That's a great nap. It's 2
and
hours.
I don't have children, I have dogs.
Yes.
And so that's to me, that's my quality time with my babies.
Oh, they'll lay right on the bed
yeah,
with you.
snuggle. It's a snuggle party for sure.
That's great. No, this sort of surprised me. So now that we're mentioning it, the two things it said were in this study, and I bet Fox News has got some info on that. Let me. Okay, so we're just going to look. But so it said if you sleep much longer than about an hour, 60 minutes, starting at 60, maybe going 90 or even longer, you're not.
I mean, I understand in the sense that half your day's gone, but I don't understand how that could be.
Yeah. Okay, so let's see.
And I just wanted to say to the chat room, I've noticed that none of you have tweeted pictures of your coffee to me, so I am personally offended.
Okay, so here it is, and this is straight from Fox News, and I think it's pretty interesting. So researchers looked at 200 men and 186 women.
Well, now I feel left out.
Do you? Okay. Participants who slept midday had a 5% lower blood pressure level compared to those who didn't sleep at all. And their average readings were 4% lower when they were awake and 6% lower while they were sleeping. So apparently a quick nap is good to just kind of bring that blood pressure down. We're in a little bit of a stress-oriented business. Come on, I'm not telling anybody something they don't know. Right. So anyway, there's that. Okay.
Yeah, I have to tell you something, Hunter.
Yeah, go for it.
I'm going to still sleep for 2 hours.
I'm going to too. There's no study that I can think of that's going to get me to change my habits on probably anything.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, now this doesn't really go for the why. Oh, wait. The team observed that longer sleep was more beneficial. This is a different study than
We
the one I was
love
after.
this study. This
Yeah.
is our favorite one.
Those who slept for 60 minutes midday, like a real true nap, had lower 24-hour blood pressure reading, so it helps you through the whole day. Additionally, those who slept at noon took fewer anti-hyperintensive medicines. So, in other words, you generally are doing better with your blood pressure, and you don't feel like you have to take a medicine because, although, when I go to the doctor, I don't know why, but it's a sort of a conditioned response thing. As soon as they start strapping that thing on, I'm like, thinking, oh boy, here we go.
Yeah.
And then I always get a little bit of a higher blood pressure reading at the doctor than when I do it at home because I have a little testy deal I have at the house.
Yeah, it's the process, perhaps. Perhaps it's just the process of being in that cold room and...
Yeah. Maybe so. Maybe because it is cold. It is cold, that's for sure.
Well, it's just the environment.
But I feel like I have not delivered on the headline that I was trying to bring. Oh, here we go. Double-edged sword of napping. I believe this might be more to the area of what we were looking for. And who can't relate to this? I mean, I have to believe that some of you guys in the chat box, after we kind of, when's that first break?
We do a break from 1:30 to 2:30.
1:30 to 2. I would have to believe a few folks take a nap.
Well, I do. I'm under the desk.
So that they can
Don't
be
tell.
ready
Don't tell
to
Samia. She
ready to
kicks me.
rejoin. Okay, here is the okay. The European Society of Cardiology analyzed 400 people. Wait, who suffer from blood pressure? This is also a blood pressure thing. It was discovered that sleepers have 5% lower than those who skip the naps. Maybe this will have the bad news. It was found that the longer the nap, the more the blood pressure drops. In addition, the study showed those who have... On the other hand... here. Okay, on the other hand, needing naps could be an early indicator of undiagnosed health issues. For example, those who rest at noon may suffer from sleep disturbance during the night, which makes them more likely to develop diabetes, and they don't really know what's going on. You know, I have diabetes.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, type 2. And so I wonder if over the years of all of my, poor sleep habits, which you can't have an exactly great sleep schedule when you're on this schedule, I wonder if that, increased it. Anyway, regular nappers who require 1 hour long rest, according to a recent Cambridge study, overall, over the course of their life, have a 35% greater risk of dying from, it doesn't say what exactly, but it does say that it's an indication that people are dealing with respiratory diseases.
That's pretty scary.
Yeah, so anyway, there's a lot of information too. I would say if you like taking your naps, take them.
Yeah, just go hard. Take that nap.
Ooh, now this is really practical info. There's the last little bit. So this professor at Stanford tells the Wall Street Journal, which is sort of part of our whole
I love Wall
here.
Street Journal.
I know,
yeah.
isn't it great? That if you take a nap and you dream, so say you're only napping for a short one, 20, 30 minutes, that kind of a thing, and you're dreaming, that's proof that you're not getting enough rest at night.
Oh, I love dreams. When I was reading Twilight, I would dream of Edward Cullen, and it was my favorite thing.
Really?
It was my favorite thing to read and then go to sleep and dream of Edward.
Wow.
Don't ever tell anyone this.
Oh, no, that's good, Kens. It's just a little insight.
I had some things I wanted to discuss with you. First of all, before you leave me, Ben Carson and Trump, those polls are interesting.
Oh, my
goodness. Two polar opposite personalities, polar opposite postures.
That is a really good observation on your part because if you were looking for overall just kind of approach to problem solving or just overall your personality, you're right. These two couldn't be on the entire campaign trail amongst Republicans, Democrats, Independents. You couldn't be farther apart than the soft-spoken Dr. Ben Carson to the let's take him head on, here we go, Donald Trump.
Who am I going to put in their place today?
Right.
It's like every time he opens his mouth, I'm like, everybody duck.
Yeah. No. Today's headline, by the way, which I thought this was smart of him, he said something about it over the weekend. Did you hear what it was? Who he's going to take on next?
No.
The gangs.
Whoa.
He said, I will take on gangs, and we'll get rid of gangs in this country so fast it'll make your head spin.
Ah, I love that.
Well, of course.
He's such a tough cookie.
Yeah, we all know we got a problem with gangs.
We do.
Gang activity and the violence it leads to and everything else. So smart on his part.
Yes.
But of course people want to know how.
But he did lay out his immigration plan as unrealistic as certain things are. But I have to say, what the Democrats are really pitching a fit about is how are you going to get all of these people out of the country? Are you going to load them up on the bus? Are you going to go knock on everybody's door? But reality is they're trying to take, well, I hate to say this because I sound like such a conservative, but if the objective is to take guns away with gun control, or how are you going to knock on everybody's door and take their guns out of their home? So it's like their arguments are.
Right.
We could throw the same argument in their face in regards to some of their politics as well.
Right.
But I do think that he will lay out a plan in regards to gangs, and then if it is successful, we will see Scott Walker, Marco Rubio, Ben Carson, Carly Fiorina. They'll all start to talk about it too, because they followed suit with illegal immigration.
Right.
Because last go around, when everybody pulled back, they said we really need that Latino vote. We really need to market ourselves to them. Donald Trump did a complete 180, came out and went after a specific group, and now it seems like everybody's following suit.
Well, it was Scott Walker. Funny that you would mention him. He actually gave some sort of a comment to somebody this weekend. It's actually getting to the point it's hard to sort of keep track. There's so many candidates.
There absolutely is.
But he said something like
candidates.
he thinks the whole idea of building a wall is one that is probably worth exploring. Which, it's fine that he's now staken out of position, but again, he's reacting to Donald Trump. These guys have got to figure out how to make their own headlines, and Chris Christie did it. Now, did you get into the whole Chris Christie thing yet?
I'm off and on Christie.
Okay. So today, his, where could I find it? I want to read it to you as close to verbatim as possible. So this, what Christie said is actually out trumping Trump for headlines for today.
Oh.
So, all right, here we go. Here it comes. So, let's see. I want to get somebody that I think is going to be fair on their coverage of it. Okay, I think this might work. So he says.
While you're looking at that too, I have to mention Martin O'Malley. I thought it was really creative of him to do a press conference in front of Trump's building to actually get some cameras on him.
Did he?
Yeah.
When was this? This
that
weekend?
Was last week.
Oh, okay.
Or at the end of last week, he did a press conference in front of one of Trump's buildings, because otherwise all we're talking about is Bernie Sanders and Hillary Clinton. And it was a great, interesting way for him to actually get some cameras in his face.
And likewise, Kins, I thought when Carly Fiorina, who at the time was nowhere in the polls, went to a Hillary Clinton event in South Carolina and held a news conference out in front of that convention center.
Sneaky.
I thought that was brilliant on her part, too. Yeah. But now she doesn't need it. Now she's doing so great in the polls. But anyway, so here's what Chris Christie said. Now, he said, at any moment, FedEx can tell you where a package is. It's on the truck. It's at the station. It's on the airplane. This is speaking in New Hampshire. Yet here we let people come into the country with visas, and the minute they come in, we lose track of them. We need to have a system that tracks you from the moment you come in, and when your time is up, however long your visa is, then we go get you. We tap you on the shoulder and say, "Excuse me, thanks for coming, time to go." Now the headline, so that's what he said. Well, the headline, the way it's being played is, Christie, track immigrants like a FedEx package. Okay.
Which is very important to me. I need to know where my packages are.
Which is, it is interesting that in private enterprise, they care so much about it, you can know at any moment. But we don't have what he's trying to say here is we don't even care enough to have a system set up where we can actually know whether or not the whole visa situation is working or not. So he said, and it's not in this article, but he said, I would hire, he must have already have a commitment from this guy or whatever. He said he was going to hire the guy from FedEx to come on to the government for 90 days and help to develop a system where they can actually keep track of visas that are issued.
That's creative.
Now, if all you see is the lower third, and we just talked about this, you think, oh, well, that guy wants to, insert a chip.
Right, or just one of those codes, a tattooed code.
Correct, right. Or insert a chip into your forearm or something, which is
that
not what
only
he's saying.
happens in the movies.
Correct.
Justin Timberlake in time.
So again, you have to sort of drill down to see exactly what the story is. But point being,
that was something that
he grabbed the headlines.
Exactly. That's a cool move. And I did see he was talking about how he's always been the political underdog, and I don't think that that's the case. There was a time when he was the GOP's shining star. He made the mistake of hugging it out with Obama on a tarmac, and everybody wasn't down with that.
Yeah, the hug has definitely cost him with a lot of, I think, GOP faithful.
Yeah.
Funny enough, it doesn't ever seem to have bothered Mitt Romney, even though some people pointed to that as this like momentum swing in those final few days.
Really?
But I mean, what I saw was he's like, hey, he's trying to do his job as governor. Isn't it interesting that Romney has now completely, I think everybody thought, sort of the grandfather of the party as our previous nominee. He's like been nowhere.
Yeah, he's laying low, but I almost think it's beneficial to the party because it's like you don't want the person that didn't win hanging around, kicking rocks and giving their opinion on who's great and who's going places because it's like you didn't win.
Yeah.
Why would you know?
Right. Yeah. Well, it is interesting. When we first started talking about this, you said, okay, so the polling is out, and it's pretty darn fascinating. This is the most recent poll, and so let me share it with you and the audience. And
I covered the Ben Carson event when Ben Carson was in town, and there were a lot of posters there that were Carly and Carson. A lot of people suggesting that Carson run for president and Carly be his VP. And I thought, when you listen to them speak, their tone is very similar. I can definitely see it. But two of the non-political people.
Oh my goodness!
Can you really package that together? Because they've got great resumes and they've got interesting lives, but in regards to politics,
if you were right now. Because we really don't know who's going to win the nomination, but if you were looking for a headline, to me, what you can tell so far, and this is absolutely definite, despite the fact the poll numbers for each candidate are going up and down, is people want an insurgent type of candidate. They want a non-politician. You look at these numbers out of Iowa, and the big headline is that Ben Carson is now tied with Donald Trump. First time. They're both at 23%.
That's amazing.
And that is, I don't know how much of that is coming off the debate, because people thought he did quite well in the debate, or how much of it is just sort of a groundswell of support that's been slowly building for him. So it could be either one of those, or it could be some people who like Donald Trump as the outsider saying, now I'm going to take a look at this guy. Because we learned from 2012 that it seems like every month there's some new flavor of the month that has everybody kind of interested.
Yeah.
And you remember, we went from, at one point Herman Cain was far and away in the polls, and then he dropped off.
I remember that.
And then Rick Santorum was doing really well, and then he dropped off. Rick Perry, until his oops moment at the debate, was tops. So it's one of those three things. Either he's siphoning off a little bit of Trump support, or it's just the natural growth of his campaign, and he has a very much of a grassroots type of appeal.
And how interesting that we are not really considered a state where you need to win. This is not a state that is considered one of those historical places where you need to dominate. But we've had both Donald Trump and Ben Carson visit us.
Sure.
Isn't that weird?
Yeah, but they tried, Kins, a few years ago to try to get our primary date moved way up. I think it was going to be either in front of New Hampshire or in front of South Carolina.
Wow.
And the party said, if you do that, we will take away 50% of your delegates at the convention.
Oh.
We like the system the way it is. It's Iowa, it's New Hampshire, it's South Carolina.
Wow.
And then after that, I guess maybe it doesn't matter so much. But if we could have pulled that off, and maybe if the people who were behind that movement would have just stuck with it and said, fine, we'll deal with that at the convention, but over the long term they would relent. Arizona should be. We are such a melting pot of the whole country and really of the world that there is so much room here for divergency of opinions, you know?
Yeah.
Now, you know, I used to live in Seattle because I went to the UW, and I'm a very proud Husky. But it's very liberal up there, and you really, you know, I don't know that everybody is too forward with their thoughts if they have conservative thoughts.
Yeah.
You know, if you're in a group of 20 people who are, I don't know, you're all sitting around and everybody's expressing the same opinion and it's not yours. So
that was me in Los Angeles, California. I was the most quiet person in the city.
Yeah, well, I'm just saying. So when you get to Arizona, it had to be a breath of fresh air for you that you could express any opinion, any opinion whatsoever. So that's number one. Number two, everybody here, except for, you know, second, third generation, everybody else who's here is here from somewhere else. Yeah. So they bring a little bit of that Ohio feel with them, or that Oregon feel, or that Alabama feel, or whatever. And we are a better testing ground, if you ask me,
I agree,
than some of these other states.
Yeah.
So,
that's great. That's a great observation.
Yeah, and I really think that you sort of nailed it just in terms of talking about why aren't we in the forefront? But they do come, because we're getting to be a big enough state now. Kins, when I moved here, the year was 1982, and I started work at this TV station. I spent a few years at one other one.
I wasn't born yet.
Right. Can you imagine? I started at this station before you were even born. It's crazy.
And this carpet is the same.
Yeah, but this is a new paint job.
Yeah, this
right
is
here
the
for
new.
News
This is
Now.
new.
This is just the greatest thing. I just love News Now, mostly
I just
because
love you, Hoon.
Hey, Kins, the feeling's mutual.
Aww.
But I mean, mostly because we can come like a guy. I'm on Periscope when the storm was rolling in on Friday night, and out there at my house in Mesa, and the guy is, or was it Thursday? When was the first? Anyways,
it was definitely there. I believe that there was crazy weather on Thursday.
Okay, yeah, maybe it was then. So anyway, a guy says to me, "So why do you Periscope? You have access to live TV." And I said, "It's the interactivity of it, and it's the same here." Because just let's just read. Here's Halala, who says, "Hooner, you have an amazing shirt tie combo." Just saying. Thanks, Halala.
Rachel loves us. We love Rachel.
Yeah. Oh gosh, Debbie, when I lived in Vermont, I was the only person who didn't carve Obama into 5 pumpkins on my porch.
Debbie, that's because you're unique. You're special.
Oh, that is interesting. But
yeah, no, I completely agree. It's there's live television, and then there's actually including the people that are watching and trying to collaborate with your audience, and that's such important content to actually collaborate with your audience, because you actually begin to create relationships with the people that are watching you, and they're more invested in the program or in the content when they get to be a part of it. And I think that that's very special, and that's why we love News Now.
I think that's really insightful. And one day last week when I was sitting up here with Samia, somebody made the comment, and they were relatively new, I think, to what we're doing here on News Now, and they said, this is the way all news should be delivered, in a completely conversational style. I'll tell you what's interesting about that. I think part of the reason that on TV we're number one is that we carry much less of I'm the important anchorman, I'm going to tell you this, and then this person over here is going to tell you that. I mean, we don't do anything like that, and we're very reflective of the lifestyle here in Arizona, and we're much more casual than you're going to find, I think, in probably 95% of the news product that's out there across America. Nevertheless, it's still not half as casual as what we're able to do here on News Now.
Very good point.
And that's why, even though we're in the infancy of something, that's why this is really going to grow.
And I have premature gray hairs, so I need to be in the infancy of something. I'm losing my mind. I think I'm having a midlife crisis. Being 30 years old and having to go to the hairdresser and say, please cover up my premature grays is humbling.
I think that,
so at least
from what I hear from the ladies, I think that happens a lot.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah.
I was
Okay,
gonna cry.
so let's just run through this poll because
Oh,
this
sorry,
is the
we got
headline.
off topic.
Okay. Okay, so here we go. This is a Monmouth University poll, and it is the most recent one. I don't want to get too close into the mic or I'm overmodulating, but it's the most recent one that was done. It's reflective of the last 3 days. It's the 27th through the 30th. So they wrapped it up last night.
Wow.
Put their collated all their stuff, and here we go. Carson has now risen to number 1 and tied with Donald Trump at number 1. There's never been a poll. In fact, I asked Brett Baer. This is one of the reasons I love
Brett
Mondays.
Baer,
I
yeah.
get to talk to him every Monday.
I did not know that. Now I'm just gonna invest in that. I love Brett Baer.
TiVo, that 6 a.m. hour. I get about 3 or 4 one-on-one minutes with Brett on the big headlines of the day.
That is cool.
And I said to him, here's a guy who just a couple of months ago was, at 2%. Most of the polls, Ben Carson was 2-3%. Maybe a
knew the
few,
name.
he'd pop up to like an 8
Mm-hmm.
kind of a thing. And so for him to be at 23% and tied with Trump is a huge headline. Number 3, and this is Iowa. And so the thing about Iowa that I do love, and I'd still rather see Arizona be first in the chute, but the thing I love about Iowa is they take it so seriously.
Yeah.
They really,
it's an art.
They really research the candidates. They really take the time to go out and appear at these events. And so anyway, you've got Trump and Carson tied for 1. So who's number 3?
Carly?
That is correct.
Jeb, just back it up.
Well, what did I saw a headline on Drudge this weekend that said Jeb ebb. Like the tide is ebbing, and the ebb, it's like the tide's rolling back out, and that's been it.
Well, my mom said to me, "Did you know that some of Jeb's fundraisers have quit?" And I said, "Yes, Donald Trump told me on Twitter over the weekend." Donald Trump was gloating about it over Twitter.
Really?
But here's my question for you, because
Okay.
Carly and Ben are
Yes.
so strong.
Yeah.
They're confident. They are so smart. They're soft spoken.
Mm-hmm.
How does Donald Trump attack them without alienating people?
Because he really hasn't gone after them,
No.
either one of them.
No,
That's a really good question.
I don't think he can.
I think that he would be wise not to, because he's doing just fine on his own. And Jeb Bush makes such a convenient target for him, because if you're an anti-establishment candidate, that's the reason people are giving you so much support. So if you start attacking the other anti-establishment candidate, I don't think it's going to feel right or fit well with the person who has that mindset. And a lot of people do here in 2016. They're so fed up with politics as usual. I know we say that all the time, but it's really true this time around.
Donald Trump is a walking, talking display of that, because I don't think ever in our lives, while we were sitting there watching The Apprentice, even if just channel surfing, would we imagine that man would be a representation of our country.
Yeah, no, that's exactly right. And so, and yet, another really interesting thing, there was another poll that came out of Iowa that still showed Trump was in the lead, but Carson closing in fast.
Wow.
That was a Des Moines Register, and they're highly respected, but it's a little bit further back on the time frame, where it started on the 23rd and ended on the 26th, versus Monmouth, they started theirs on the 27th, so it's much more of a snapshot of where we are right now. But the other thing about the Des Moines Register poll was that people are now giving Trump, at least in Iowa, a lot of credit as a viable and winnable candidate.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
That's just so fascinating to me.
Yeah.
But I mean, if you are a young person that has grown up entertained, iPad, like this is, to me, he's entertainment. I mean, and he's pop culture, and reality is Barack Obama became our president because he was accepted and encouraged by some of our biggest pop culture
totally
icons.
embraced him.
Puff Daddy on the stage at the VMAs wearing an Obama shirt. Katy Perry wearing dresses with his face on them during concerts.
Right.
He was embraced by pop culture, and he became such a familiar name. And the graffiti street art for him that you'd see on every corner in Los Angeles, and Donald Trump just shows up and he is pop
Yeah,
culture. He's
right.
already there.
Yeah, he is already pop culture. That's a good way to put it. But I do think that the majority of pop culture that comes out of Hollywood is more liberal.
Oh, they are. They're Hillary now. Katy Perry's Twitter icon right now is her within the Hillary logo.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah, and I just
Okay.
saw that Hillary Clinton was having a fundraiser at Justin Bieber's manager's house.
We'll see.
So,
That's smart on her part. Actually, it was smart of Hillary
yeah.
to be hanging out with the Kardashians on the night of the Republican debate,
I
because
know.
she was able to grab that pop culture
She got
slice
that
of the
Perez Hilton headline.
of the media,
Yeah.
of the media world. Okay,
Yeah.
so back to this poll. You've got Carson and Trump tied for first, and Fiorina then alone in third place, and they're the only ones in double digits. Although Ted Cruz is close, but if you look at it and you say that's 56% in a time frame where there's 17 candidates. That's 56% who are saying, do not give me business as usual. Do not give me a Washington politician.
I understand.
And if you wanted to make this point, next up in the poll is Ted Cruz, and he has totally made his persona
as butting heads with the
correct. I'll call Mitch McConnell a liar if I want to. I'll go to Washington and I'll aggravate and frustrate. So even though he is really inside Washington, he's at least able to be as much of appear to be an outsider as possible. You add his 9 points and you're up to well over 2/3 that you could say are the insurgent type of candidates, and that just particularly for Republicans who are so thought to be the next guy up, right after when McCain had run before and not won, and then did run and got the nomination in 2008, it was sort of thought that, well, it is his turn. And then Romney didn't win, so in 2012 it was thought, well, okay, we'll let Romney do it because it's his turn. And that has been sort of the conventional wisdom of Republicans. But there's so much anger at the way the country is headed right now, just the direction and all the problems we're having, that for the first time in a long time, that is not going to be the way the Republican nomination is secured this time.
Are
is
you
the
sure?
next guy up?
I'm so afraid that it really is run by the suits and the powerhouses, and they've decided that it's Jeb, and so they'll figure it out.
Well,
they'll make it Jeb.
It's possible. That is possible. But you can't argue against these numbers.
That's true.
And there is such a thing as momentum in the political world, and he's completely lost his. As much off of one debate as anything else. He was rusty. He looked like he didn't even want to be on the stage.
Which is his mode of operandi. He never looks like he wants to be there.
Right.
But he's sweet and he's smart. I want to like him.
Yeah.
I really do.
Yeah.
I think he's got a good moral compass.
Oh, I think so too. And I think he has a pretty good story to tell of actual things that he accomplished while he was in the governor's chair.
Yeah.
But right now, it's like Chris Christie when he was up on the stage at the first debate. He's talking about, well, here's what I accomplished, and we cut taxes and fees 19 times, and blah, blah, blah. And I just thought, nobody wants to know about your resume, your previous resume in government. That's just not what they want to know about. They want to know today, how are you solving today's problems?
Good point.
And so let's go through the rest of this poll here. Scott Walker, at one time, was thought to be the shoo-in in Iowa because he was their next-door neighbor. He's while he is in fourth place in this poll,
he's such a lame duck. He doesn't butt heads with anybody. He agrees
Right.
with everyone.
Yeah.
It's just like watching paint dry.
There you are. While he's actually in fifth place in this poll, which is better than where Jeb Bush is, he's still down to 7%, and you got to really turn that around. After that, in Monmouth, let's see here. I want to make sure we give everybody the proper credit. Actually, then you do have Jeb Bush at number 6, with Rubio and Kasich tied for
I
number
like
7.
Kasich too. I like Kasich a lot.
Kasich was, I know he was a sub-headline coming out of
Those
what's
debates.
funny? The big headline coming out of the debate was the Trump war with Megyn Kelly.
Absolutely, yeah.
But
Trump didn't do that great in that debate.
He didn't do that great, and even though the media does kind of have a tendency to decide what the headlines are going to be, people I really do think this process works in large measure because people have been looking at these candidates and they really watch the debate closely, and so you see growth with Ben Carson. Carly Fiorina got good headlines coming out of the debate. You see growth with Carly Fiorina, and even though I don't know, 60%, I'd say more than 50% anyway of the talk was the Trump, Megyn Kelly squabble. But in reality, people are really paying close attention to this and really thinking it through.
Mm-hmm.
So it's interesting to see Bush at, down to that level, and then Kasich, who didn't get a lot. He got generally good reviews, but didn't get a lot of headlines coming out of it.
Yeah.
I think he served himself well. So let's count it up because, my understanding is the next debate is the top 8.
Wow.
Not the top 10.
Yeah, but I also understood that CNN was using older polls because Carly Fiorina was not going to be included, and she was upset about that.
Well, I can't imagine that they're going to...
They were using polls that were taken prior to the first... Isn't that silly?
Okay, well, that's dumb. They should
Yeah.
have... The debate is, I believe, the 16th.
Yeah.
And they need to include polls that go up to probably the 15th if it's possible, or the 13th or the 14th. But anyway, so
See,
you get...
it says Fiorina blasts CNN for debate rules that could exclude her.
Wow.
Isn't that silly?
Yeah, it is.
Fiorina hopping mad at CNN over looming debate snub. Yeah. Because we don't want to see the same guys that were on the Fox News. That was boring.
If
I don't want to
Fiorina-
see the same guys.
Yeah, if Fiorina doesn't get on that debate stage, something's wrong
Mm-hmm.
with their methodology.
Yeah.
So you got Trump and Carson at 1, and then Fiorina at 3, and then Cruz at 4, Walker at 5. If you're just going to go with the top 8, and you've already got Fiorina in there, then you've got Bush at 6, and Kasich and Rubio at 7 and 8.
Which would be a great debate.
That
would
actually
be
would be a
interesting
solid
individuals.
debate.
Yeah.
Rand Paul just didn't cut through in the last
I
debate.
do not see him anywhere ever. I really don't. What is he doing? What does
Yeah.
his campaign consist of?
Yeah.
We, here on Fox 10 News Now, we take live feeds. We've got these live satellites. We're all over the globe.
Yeah.
And I'm lucky if we get a Rand Paul event once every 3 weeks or once every 4 weeks. I don't hear or see from him. And this is a guy that made his name, like his father, through grassroots marketing.
Mhm.
So where is the grassroots marketing? I don't know if they're laying low and for whatever reason that I can't comprehend or what.
Yeah. He just seemed he did decide that he was going to be the Trump attack dog in that debate, right? You
Yeah.
could tell right out of the chute.
Well,
He's like,
I think he also went after Christie, and he was fun. That was fun to watch.
That's right. But Christie is at 1% in this poll, this Iowa poll.
I don't think he's very likable.
We'll see if he gets to 2% with this latest FedEx remark, because people who like where Trump's coming from are going to like where he's coming from on this, especially if they dig in past the headline and see kind of what he's saying. So, anyway, yeah. Do you see Trump getting the nomination, asks Tree. I have gone from highly skeptical to primarily just thinking this is so great for us in the media and for you guys who love a good every day. There's actually a juicy tidbit on the political trail you can sink your teeth into.
Yeah.
And if you guys are political junkies like Kins and me, then you're gonna love that.
It's
that
not
was
politics as usual anymore.
That was my first approach to it, but I actually do think he is. I think people, just like this Iowa poll shows, that they're putting him in the category where he can be considered electable.
Love it.
So I actually think that the thing about it is, if Hillary Clinton is so badly damaged by the email scandal, then that will take its toll on her in the primary, not in the general, and she won't be the nominee.
But I don't think that Bernie Sanders, as a socialist, as a self-described socialist,
Right.
could be the Democrat nominee.
Yeah.
And Martin O'Malley, we're just not hearing enough from him. Although I think I like him. I've spent some time watching him, and as far as just likability, I don't know anything about his plans. As far as likability, he's a handsome guy. He's a well-spoken guy. I think he's creative. He did that press conference.
Do we have to get into the looks aspect of it here, Kens?
Well, absolutely we do, because it's me.
I can't. I'm still perplexed as to, with all of Hillary's troubles, why Martin O'Malley isn't
a Fiorina. Yeah.
Why is Martin O'Malley not at 10% in these polls?
Exactly.
I mean, is everybody shift?
Because I did not have sexual relations with that woman. Because Hillary Clinton denies it. She is a great personal speaker. I mean, I've seen her some weakness lately. She really does cringe when Ed Henry opens his mouth during press conferences. I think she has an issue with when Ed Henry throws some curveballs her way.
Did you read that piece this weekend about Ed Henry?
No, who wrote it?
Oh gosh, it was, believe it or not, it was highly complimentary of Ed Henry.
Oh, okay.
And even Fox News, and it was from the Daily Beast.
Oh, I'll have to repost it. Ed Henry follows me on Twitter. He's my buddy.
Does he really now?
Yeah, I love Ed Henry.
Kens.
But he is great with his questions. He's a little pest when it comes to following her around on the campaign trail. Yeah. And you can tell he gets under her skin. I don't know if you saw the last press conference where she said he asked two questions
about wiping the server, right?
Well, no, it was something in regards to her actual campaign, and then the next thing was in regards to the having servers in somebody's closet, because her server was held in somebody's closet, I think on the West Coast.
Okay.
Her private server was just in someone's house in their closet, and she was like, "Well, I'll answer one of your questions because I think you at least deserve that." And of course, didn't answer the salacious question, answered the general question. Yeah. But you can tell that he gets under her skin, and it's a fun exchange to watch.
You go look for this piece on Daily Beast, because it talks. Ed Henry is very open about the fact, he is now the president of the White House Correspondents Association.
Wow.
So he is well liked amongst his colleagues.
Very much so.
But he said Jay Carney was so sort of condescending toward him that he could never get past the fact that he worked at Fox.
Yeah.
And it was.
Does Jay work for CNN?
No,
or is it MSNBC? He went to work as a correspondent for one of our competitors.
Oh, boy. I thought he was completely out of media now and was doing something.
Jay Carney. He looks like an Archie comic. Do you know what that is?
Oh, yes. Yeah, now he's at Amazon.
Oh.
He's a senior vice president.
But he did leave and go to CNN as a senior political analyst.
Okay, and that didn't last very long, did it?
No.
So Ed Henry talks about how the new guy who took Jay Carney's place is able to, he says, he'll rip me if he feels like I'm being ripped, but I've never had a cheap shot from Josh Earnest.
I love Josh Earnest.
Compared to this sort of kind of
cattiness
persnickety. Cattiness.
Yeah.
That's
Jay,
good, Kens.
Yeah, thanks.
I love the way you pull those words right up. I'm like, what is that?
Well, I'm very familiar with catty. But no, I love talking to you, Hoon. I think maybe we should be at happy hour together. This feels good.
Sure.
This feels good.
Sure it does. And you haven't even sipped on your Monster drink.
I know.
And I got to probably get going.
I know.
The rest of
You're a grown up. I get it. I get it.
No, but hey, that was the beauty of it. And Sami and I have many days like this too. I'll look and I'm like, didn't I just sit down? And it's almost an hour.
It's magic.
That's magic.
Well, so you don't have to stand up in front of the camera. I'll transition to Ted. Do you want to tell everybody bye?
Bye, you guys.
And Rachie says you're fantastic, but you know that.
Rachie.
Okay, I'm heading back over to Ted. We're going to finish out our town hall with Ted Cruz right now.
Sorry, Gio. I got to go.
Talk about the first things they're going to do if they become president. But with regard to the Justice Department and the fact that Loretta Lynch didn't exactly enjoy your inquisition in the Senate, if I could phrase in liberal press, how would that conversation go, assuming she was still in office? How would you restructure our Justice Department to bring justice?
Listen, it is a fabulous question. we have seen a corruption, not just of the White House, but across the federal government, across the agencies, and this Department of Justice has become the most partisan and lawless Department of Justice we've ever seen. I'm an alumnus of the Department of Justice. I was an Associate Deputy Attorney General at DOJ. You know, the Department of Justice has a long bipartisan tradition of standing apart from politics, of exercising faithfulness and fidelity to the law and the Constitution. I pledged, you asked about the first day in office, I pledged to do 5 things on the first day in office. First thing I intend to do is to rescind every single illegal and unconstitutional. The second thing I intend to do is to direct the Department of Justice to open an investigation into Planned Parenthood. And to prosecute any and all criminal violations by that organization. The third thing I pledge to do is to instruct the Department of Justice and the IRS and every other federal agency that the persecution of religious liberty ends today. The fourth thing I pledge to do on the first day in office is rip to shreds this catastrophic Iranian nuclear deal. And the fifth thing is begin the process of moving the American embassy in Israel to Jerusalem, the once and eternal capital of Israel. When it comes to the Department of Justice, I will appoint an Attorney General who will follow the law. The Department of Justice should be blind to party or ideology. And we will have an Attorney General who will faithfully follow the law and the Constitution, irrespective of party, and that includes being willing to stand up to the President who appointed you. That's what neither Eric Holder or Loretta Lynch have indicated any willingness to do, is to stand up to presidential power. An Attorney General needs to have the courage and fortitude to do that, and we're going to get back to the rule of law and stop the lawlessness of this administration.
What are you going to do for the mental health community?
You know, mental health is a serious challenge. And it is a challenge that millions of Americans struggle with. One of the problems with mental health is that many people in this country don't have health insurance coverage. And so they're unable to get treatment for the mental health challenges they have. I think we need to dramatically increase health insurance coverage in this country. Now, how do we do that? Well, we've seen one approach to it, and that's Obamacare. And Obamacare has proven to be a manifest failure. What has happened under Obamacare? Millions of Americans have lost their jobs, have been forced into part-time work, have lost their health insurance, have lost their doctors. Millions of Americans, great many people in New Hampshire have seen your health insurance premiums skyrocket under Obamacare. So after we repeal Obamacare, we need common sense health insurance reform. And let me describe what that looks like, and it'll address the mental health issues as a component of that. I think health insurance reform should follow 3 broad principles. We should expand competition and the marketplace. We should empower patients to make healthcare decisions in consultation with their doctor. And we should disempower government bureaucrats from getting in between us and our doctors. Now, 3 specific reforms that reflect those principles. Number 1, we should allow people to purchase health insurance across state lines. That's currently illegal. You can't, as a resident of New Hampshire, you can't purchase health insurance in any of the other 49 states. Now, if you want more access, if you want more people to have insurance that can cover mental health treatment, the biggest barrier to access is cost. If you look at the people that don't have coverage, they can't afford it. If you want more access, what you want is more choices and lower cost. What does Obamacare do? It is fewer choices and higher cost. if we had a true 50-state national marketplace, what that would allow is the availability of low-cost, catastrophic coverage that people could afford. The second key reform is we need to expand health savings accounts so that people can save in a tax-advantaged way for more routine treatment and care, and that includes, I would note, mental health treatment. You know, in my family, I have a family where a number of us in our family have struggled with alcohol abuse and substance abuse, and there are both physical illness aspects and mental health illness aspects that dealing with addiction. My sister died of an accidental drug overdose. So, thank you. But these are challenges. Every family faces these challenges. No family in America is immune from these struggles. With health savings accounts, it would enable people to save in a tax-advantaged way, to seek treatment, and to seek help for the challenges they're facing. And then I think the third critical piece is to seek to de-link health insurance from employment.
Yes.
You know, a lot of people don't know the history, but it's actually an historical accident why most of us get our health insurance from our jobs. It arose coming out of World War II, where there were wage and price controls in effect. And employers couldn't offer higher wages to attract new employees. So they began offering perks. They began offering things like health insurance, and the tax laws incentivized them. The problem is we don't live in the 1950s anymore. Most people don't go work for one company for 40 years, retire, and get a gold watch. That is not modern-day America. We are a mobile, transitory society. People move from company to company, to industry, sometimes from city or state to state. And if you lose your job, or if I lose my job, you don't lose your car insurance, or your house insurance, or your life insurance. There's no reason on earth you should lose your health insurance. And it's the worst one to lose because it creates much of the problem of pre-existing conditions, where people lose their coverage because they lose a job and they can't get a new policy because they've either had a sickness or an injury. So we need a reform that makes health insurance personal and portable and affordable, and I think that's a contrast that is far more attractive to the American people than is the failed policy represented by Obama.
Senator, I'm an entrepreneur, and
what sort of business?
Well, I'm going to speak about a biologics business.
Okay.
Everybody complains in this country about us developing businesses and then shipping the jobs abroad.
Yep.
There's a technology in India. My partner, who's Indian, we want to import that technology. It's a biologic plant stimulant.
Yes.
And the EPA and the Department of Agriculture suggested that we might be bioterrorists and rejected our application to bring the technology that would have immediately created a company, dozens of jobs here in New Hampshire, and probably dozens of jobs in the upper Midwest. So I want to know what you would do as president to rein in the EPA, and we can talk broadly about everything from coal to everything we know about, but specifically rein in the EPA and the Department of Agriculture from preventing me risking my capital to create jobs for people in this country.
That's a great question, and it's a very important question. Let's talk broadly about regulation, then specifically about the EPA and the Department of Agriculture. If you look at regulation, one of the things that frustrates all of us, when Democrats are in office, regulations grow exponentially. When Republicans are in office, regulations still grow. They just grow a little more slowly. I have a cynical friend of mine who suggested a bumper sticker. Republicans, we waste less. You know, not exactly a banner to march into battle under. If you look at what President Obama has done, that is an abuse of power that is unconstitutional. In particular, what he's done is he regularly intrudes into the Article I authority of Congress. Under the Constitution, Congress has all legislative authority. The President has no authority to make the law, to change the law, or to ignore the law.
Somebody needs to tell them that.
But on the other hand, under Article II, the President has a great deal of authority in the executive branch. Article II makes there is one President in whom all executive authority is vested. If you look at the entire regulatory state, These armies of bureaucrats that frankly outlast elected officials and promulgate rules after rules after rules and look at the elected officials as a temporary annoyance. That has all been Congress's efforts over the years to constrain the executive power of the presidency. We have never once seen a president use the full Article II executive authority of the president to go after the regulatory state. And I give you my word, if I'm elected president, it will not be the case that regulations will have grown just a bit more slowly under my administration. When I leave office, the body of federal regulations will be materially smaller and human liberty an equal amount larger. Now, it's not easy to do. Washington takes on a life of its own. I talk often about the Washington cartel, the career politicians in both parties who get in bed with the lobbyists and special interests and grow government. The reason presidents don't take on the regulatory state is you pay a price. When you do that, Democrats howl. The media howls. A fair number of Republicans howl. People don't like to take the beating, so they just stay back. They say, well, I'll try not to let it get much worse. One of the big differences as people are looking at candidates in this race is who's actually demonstrated they will stand up, not just to Democrats, but to leadership in their own party, to the cartel, and endure the beating that comes from Democrats, Republicans, and the media. When it comes to taking on the EPA, listen, all of us want clean air and clean water. All of us breathe and drink. We want our kids to be able to breathe and drink and enjoy natural beauty. But the Obama EPA is not governed by an effort to protect our air and water. It's governed by radical zealots trying to shut down economic production.
And the coal industry.
The coal industry is a great example. The coal industry. One of the few areas where the president was really candid. He said at the beginning of his administration his object was to bankrupt every coal-fired plant in America. He's made real progress to that. You know, when you look at, you're talking about biologics, whether it's the EPA or the FDA, Department of Agriculture, or the FDA. I'm the chairman of the Science and Space Subcommittee of the Senate Commerce Committee. We just held a hearing on cures that I chaired, looking at the potential to cure major diseases, the need for additional research, but also the regulatory barriers at the FDA. Do you know how many drug and medical device manufacturers are going over to Europe to get their drugs and medical devices approved? Because it's easier in Europe to get approved than it is here, and so Europeans have access to life-saving treatment that we bar here. We need fundamental reform to make innovation easier. That creates jobs, but it also creates opportunity and improves the quality of life. And we need a president willing to take it on. And let me make just a final point on this. Of the 10 candidates on that debate stage in Cleveland, every one of them is going to say, I'll take on the EPA. We all know campaign conservatives. There was not a single one of those candidates who stood up there and said, I'm a squishy establishment moderate. I stand for nothing. They don't say that. They don't admit it. So how are we as voters to know the difference between who's talking a good game and who's going to execute? And I would suggest the difference is we should look to the record of who's walked the walk and has been standing doing it. And the difference between me and the others is that when I say I'll take on the EPA, I will actually take on the EPA and shrink their regulatory abuse and expand human liberty as a result.
Ladies and gentlemen, I know all of you need to go back to growing the economy in the greater Concord area, so you'll be our last question, and then we're going to need to wrap it up. Okay?
Okay.
Go ahead.
Senator Cruz, to help preserve Social Security for seniors, do you propose, are you open to lifting the cap on wages tax for Social Security so that those who earn over $118,500 pay their fair share?
Very important question. I do not believe we should raise taxes. So let me talk about taxes and then Social Security, because there are two elements of that. Raising the cap would be a major tax increase. Now, what I started with and what I've said over and over again, my top priority is economic growth. If you want economic growth, you need small business growing. Every time you raise taxes, you hammer small businesses and you destroy job creation. I don't think the problem with where we are right now is taxes are too low. And in fact, that's why I'm running on major tax reform of a simple flat tax that applies to everyone and reduces the burdens of Washington, because I want small businesses creating jobs, creating opportunity, so young people coming out of school can have job opportunities, can have a future. But let's talk about Social Security, because you are absolutely right that we need leadership on entitlement reform. By the way, anyone who tells you they intend to balance the budget without addressing entitlements is lying to you. 2/3 of our federal budget consists of entitlements. Right now, 40 cents of every dollar we spend is borrowed. You could shut down the entire federal government, and that still wouldn't solve the budget problem. You've got to address entitlements. Right now, I believe what Washington is doing is reckless. There are an awful lot of, particularly congressional Democrats, that are just letting Social Security and Medicare careen towards insolvency and bankruptcy. Social Security and Medicare are fundamental bulwarks of our society. Millions have grown to rely on them. We need to honor those commitments. And we need to save Social Security and Medicare. For years, those were treated as the third rail of politics. If you touch it, you'll get electrocuted. I'll tell you, I'm campaigning on entitlement reform. So let's talk about how you strengthen and preserve Social Security. Social Security, number one. For seniors, for those on Social Security or near retirement, there should be no changes whatsoever. Zero changes. We've made promises. People have ordered their financial affairs based on those promises. We need to honor those commitments. But for younger workers, I'm 44. It is hard to find someone my generation who thinks Social Security will be there for us. That actually presents a remarkable opportunity for constructive reform. Because there are three reforms we can do. Number one, gradually increase the retirement age for Social Security for younger workers. When FDR signed Social Security into law, the retirement age was 65. Anyone know life expectancy at the time? 62. It was actually designed to be at the very tail end of life. Today, average life expectancy is north of 78. We need to gradually increase the retirement age for younger workers where you have time to plan on it and you know what's coming. Secondly, we need to change the rate of growth of benefits so that they match inflation rather than exceeding inflation. Those two changes in and of themselves bring Social Security into solvency. But the third change, and this is critical, for younger workers, we need to allow younger workers to keep a portion of their tax payments in a personal account that they own, that they control, and that they can pass on to their kids and grandkids. That is responsible reform. And if I'm elected president, what I intend to do is work to lead and try to bring people together, solving these problems, not engage in the partisan divisive battles that has characterized the current administration, but instead focus on the shared values and objectives. We need to solve these problems, not talk about them, solve them. And that is very much my focus, and I want to just close with this. This is a gathering of leaders in the legislature, leaders in the business community, who have earned respect here in the state of New Hampshire. We are building a grassroots campaign from the people, and I am here very much to ask for your support. I ask you to join us. If we stand together from the grassroots, from the people, we can get it done. If you think of the last time America broke the Washington cartel, I would suggest it was 1980. It was the Reagan Revolution. And the way it happened is Reagan took the case to the American people. The American people rose up in incredible numbers and turned this country around. It's the only force strong enough to break the Washington cartel. We have an amazing team on the ground here in New Hampshire. Many of the folks here are already with us, but the rest of you, I would ask, please join us. We're seeing the old Reagan coalition coming back together. We're seeing conservatives and evangelicals and libertarians and Tea Party activists. We're seeing young people and Hispanics and African Americans and women and Reagan Democrats. That's how we win. It's how we win the primary in New Hampshire, and it's also how we win the general election in New Hampshire, and how we turn this country around nationwide. Thank you.
Senator, we can't thank you enough. Thank you for your service. Thank you for stepping up to the plate. Thank you for being here today. And just so you know, ladies and gentlemen, the senator bought you lunch today. So we live in the greatest state, in the greatest country on earth. Thank you for being here today. Please stay tuned. We'll be having more business roundtables coming up in the future. Thank you.
It's good to see you. It's good to see you.
And that's the conclusion of the Ted Cruz town hall from earlier today. That was at the Draft Restaurant in Concord, New Hampshire. I'm going to quickly change my lower third. And then let's delve into some national stories that I pulled from you earlier this morning. There we go. And now that Ron Hoon's gone, I want to lower this because I had to make it higher for the Hooner. Let's look at some of these national stories. I know typically you're used to Samya in the morning. Here is a very Samya-esque story for you guys. Taylor Swift. It's a Taylor Swift headline.
We do have a case.
In case you're the type who's still looking for tickets.
And it is involving counterfeit Taylor Swift tickets.
Be warned.
Turned out to be fraudulent.
And be wary.
These tickets had already been previously purchased by somebody else, and so they were not good tickets.
Denver
I'm not
police
allowed
say
to
someone
have
is
Taylor Swift music in my packages. Copyright infringement. Well, you get the hint. Don't purchase tickets from someone you can't trust. I heard 2 seconds of "we are never ever ever getting back together," and I just thought copyright. Let's see. This is a weird story.
Parents of a 12-year-old student are suing the Fay School in Southborough, claiming the private school's Wi-Fi made him ill. They say he has electromagnetic hypersensitivity syndrome, and radio frequency emissions from the school's strong wireless network has triggered headaches, nosebleeds, and nausea since 2013. But the Fay School, who wouldn't comment specifically on the lawsuit, said in a statement that a company they hired found safe radiation levels on campus.
If by having to go so far as to file a lawsuit, the family is able to help get this conversation started nationally, then I think that would be terrific.
Cece Doucette is researching the impact of Wi-Fi on our bodies. She uses a radio frequency meter to detect what she claims are high levels of Wi-Fi.
Our blood cells to act differently and they start glomming together.
But these opinions are in the medical minority. Fox 25 found 16 studies from around the world cited in this draft report from the Washington State Health Department. All of the studies found no clear and consistent evidence that Wi-Fi causes any health effects in humans. But 9 of the documents do say that long-term effects of the relatively new technology are still uncertain and long-term studies are needed.
Who knew that that was even an option or that was even an issue? I certainly didn't. A horrible story out of Texas that I'm sure you're all familiar with, but let's give you an update just in case.
There is a broken heart behind every badge tonight, and as this memorial procession through the streets of Houston proves, grief has spread across the city. Even though police here now have a suspect in custody, what they don't have is a motive for gunning down a Texas deputy who was simply putting gas in his patrol car.
It's an act of cowardice and brutality, the likes of which I've never seen before.
47-year-old Darren Goforth was a 10-year veteran of the force in Harris County. The Friday night shooting was so brutal, the gunman stood over the fallen officer and shot the married father of 2 once he was down.
I have been in law enforcement 45 years. I don't recall another incident
this cold-blooded and cowardly.
The suspect in this case is Shannon Miles. The 30-year-old has a long criminal record. He lived just blocks away from the gas station where Deputy Goforth took his last breaths.
And until we just stop hating each other for the color of our skin or because of things that have been done to us, nothing's going to change.
We've heard Black Lives Matter, all lives matter. Well, cops' lives matter too. So why don't we just drop the qualifier and just say lives matter?
Miles will have his first initial court appearance on Monday before a judge. If he is ultimately convicted, he could face the death penalty. In Houston, Casey Stiegel, Fox News.
Flowers and balloons and messages of support. Hundreds of people came out to give hugs and handshakes that will never be forgotten.
It means that the community has come together along with law enforcement. It means the people care about their officers as well as the officers caring about the people. That we're going to work together and make things better here in this community.
Deputy Darren Goforth had officer friends here, of course, but also family friends.
Whenever we were little, he used to come over and I'd always try to get him to handcuff me because I just thought the handcuffs were cool when I was little. And then we'd be staying home alone and he'd come check on us, and when we were out of town, he'd make sure our house was okay.
I think it's very tragic this had to happen, and he's a really good guy, really good officer. And I know there's people in the world that think that all cops are bad. It's not true. There's always going to be bad apples in the bunch, but he wasn't one of those.
The turnout surprised even the organizers of the vigil, but clearly every individual wanted to make a statement.
I mean, I know with everything that's going around the world, around here in the United States with, the citizens and police officers, but you can't take the law into your own hand and do something like that to someone, that's heartbreaking.
Devastating story out of Texas, and I see Kayleen in the chat room mentioning that that was a story that hit close to home. So I'm sorry to hear that. Let's try to find a lighter story. What? Hug? Like a dog? This is not lighter. But we have to watch this. What is this about?
Oh my God. They swung her dog and hit somebody with her dog, and then ran with the dog hanging. She's gonna choke their dog, anything.
Brian Halston can't believe his eyes as he watches this disturbing video going viral on social media, shot mere blocks from his home. Watch as a woman Camden Animal Control identifies as 24-year-old Angelica Olivers is embroiled in an argument with a group of people. Things get even more physical when she allegedly swings her 4-month-old pit bull puppy by its leash into the face of one of the women. We're not going to show you the full video because of its disturbing nature.
It's like jumping behind your kid, right? And using your kid to fight with.
The video shows a small puppy hanging helplessly as she's dragged and swung through the air. Animal cruelty investigator John McCain says it happened Monday here at 8th and Tulip. His officers tracked the woman down, but they're still looking for the dog.
It was really, it's just so unnecessary and malicious, and to just have a total disregard for the animal, be totally caught up in what she was doing with.
We went to Oliver's home to ask her why she allegedly abused the puppy. She's charged with animal cruelty. No one answered the door, and we didn't hear any barking. Meantime, neighbors like Halston say on some level they understand her actions, but that doesn't make it okay.
I think the thing that must have been on her mind is just getting away from the people that were trying to attack her, but still.
Oh my goodness, that is the most horrible story I wish I wouldn't have seen that. And I'm sorry that I did that to you. I can only imagine how angry you are after witnessing that, because I am disgusted as well. Is this a happy story? This looks happy. We got to get some happy in this vicinity right now.
It was the best day of my life!
If
you've never been this high on life, you probably haven't hit as many lows as 9-year-old Kylan Scortino.
It's a connective tissue disorder, so it affects every system of the body.
Kylan was born with Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, an incurable disease making her so fragile. She recently broke both wrists.
I used to take karate and now I'm taking kendo.
But she's still kicking butts and wowing crowds. Today, the Wish Connection made this little Iron Woman's dream come true. With the help of some fellow superheroes, she saved the city of Fairfield from an evil gang. In return, the mayor surprised her with a $500 shopping spree at the Solano Town Center.
Wow, that's for you.
She can't handle it.
Oh, she was just thrilled, as any child would be. And I'm certain that this is going to affect what she does with the rest of her life.
Because her symptoms and crime fighting don't mix, she will be sore tomorrow. But that's something she can handle.
Everybody, thank you!
Let's watch that sweet intro again where she's happy. I think that that's worth watching again after the traumatic dog video we watched beforehand.
It was the best day of my life!
It's a typical day for me. Me running around the newsroom. That's why you only get me at night, because they can't take my energy. They're like, just put her late. No one wants to see her. Now I'm just scanning. I want to confirm that these are happy stories before... Oh, this is interesting. Here's a good one. This is more of an educational one. It's a app that was developed for campus safety, which I think is very important. So let's check this out.
Out with the old and in with the new. CU Boulder is phasing out the old blue emergency telephones and replacing it with an app on your cell phone.
Yeah, I'll definitely get it. What's the app called?
It's called Lifeline Response and available for free courtesy of student government.
There's been classes that we've had to take that were online things. There's like a bystander class that's required. But yeah, I'm totally willing to get that app as well.
One of the app's features is called thumb mode.
That's really cool. Wow, that's crazy.
If you release your thumb from the button, you have 10 seconds to enter a passcode or you'll hear from dispatch.
A lot of the time I'll take the bus from Willville, and so I just have to walk back to my dorm at night. I've never really been scared, but if that were to happen, I would do that.
Most of the students we talked to today did have their cell phones handy walking around campus, but they were not familiar with the app.
Especially on a college campus, it's kind of scary walking around at night, so I think that's something good we have.
That's definitely something that more people need to know about, I mean, why not have something like that? I mean, that's something that everybody should have and can use at any point in time.
This is probably one of the most thought-provoking and powerful days that I have experienced.
After months of planning, Dr. MJ Mingo and a few other community leaders came up with a way to build a relationship between our law enforcement and Colorado Springs residents, in hopes that if there were ever any police-related incidents, that we would be able to rally around our law enforcement rather than immediately accuse them of any wrongdoing.
It gave me a deeper appreciation of what the men and women who serve our community have, really experienced every day.
They started us off easy with simple training on things they do every day, like performing traffic stops and arresting people.
So just like that?
Then we moved on to more difficult skills like shooting and driving.
This next part is everybody's favorite, and it's basically to mimic obstacles on the road and how to safely maneuver them.
Something my photographer Mike Duran wasn't exactly prepared for. After the training, we geared up for the real deal. Armed with these paint-filled bullets and that gun, we were prepared to go through what they call reality-based scenarios, and they did not go easy on us. On just the first mock scenario, we walked in on a man being murdered.
Stop what you're doing! Put your hands up!
Now, to be honest, I didn't shoot anybody. I was more concerned about other things.
Are you okay?
But the scenarios made us realize that law enforcement have to make these life or death decisions in seconds, giving us a better understanding of what actually goes through their minds before these shootings. They say hindsight is 20/20, and you never truly know how you would have reacted until you're put into the situation yourself.
Going through a training with people from different backgrounds, not looking at the color of their skin, their hair, but all of us being situated in a scenario where we all have to make decisions that affect not just us, but each other.
That would have been nice to have played after that Texas package. I think it's important that we kind of put ourselves in the positions of officers and understand that they are being in a lot of, more are good than bad, and we are seeing a lot of the negative because of the way that the media works, but more officers are good than they are bad, and they are very selfless and put themselves in very dangerous situations for you and I. So I think that it's important that programs like this, and this is out of Colorado, but programs like this exist so that people see how terrifying an officer's job is on a daily basis. I do have a happier dog story because unfortunately I played that horrific dog story for you about a state trooper saving the life of a dog. Hopefully this puts us in a better mood.
This is a story involving a black lab, a state trooper, and an emergency veterinarian here in St. Cloud. A combination of events and elements here that probably saved that dog's life, significantly changed the life of his owner.
Hey there, bud.
You say hi?
You look pretty good. Hey.
This is your savior.
It's a funny thing how sometimes things just come together.
You're looking pretty good.
Yeah.
This is the first time that these two men and this dog have seen each other since their fates crossed in mid-July when Ghost was hit by a car near Malacca.
He yelped real loud, and then blood was everywhere, and I picked him up and my knees buckled and I fell into the grass.
Waylon Vaughn says he was suicidal when he adopted Ghost. The dog had quickly become his rock.
I thought he needed me, you know what I mean? And I just needed him.
Desperate when he found the local vet clinic closed, he called 911, and Trooper Jason Groh responded, expecting a human.
The call was a little confusing because it came out that it might be a person.
Yeah, my best friend. I said my best friend's dying.
Trooper Groh spent a couple years in Iraq. He worked aeromedical evacuation. He spent weekends working the ER at the hospital in Baghdad's Green Zone, where he saw a lot of wounds to arms and legs.
And this is one of those things that just went on my thigh with my flight suit.
And to this day in his State Patrol medical kit, the highly adjustable tourniquets he'd used in Iraq to stop battlefield bleeding.
And with this, you could, since it's Velcro, you could wrap it as many times as you needed to get it to the size that was appropriate for a dog.
Come here, bud.
That kept Ghost from bleeding out on the ride to the affiliated emergency vet in St. Cloud.
He had a cut from probably the upper part of his elbow all the way down over the top of his wrist area here.
Would he have made it?
Well, you could speculate, but the tourniquet definitely helped his chances.
The dog that saved Waylon, now saved by a trooper, and that's kind of saved Waylon again. A felon and a drug user, he says he's been clean ever since.
This day, it didn't only it changed my heart. Like, it delivered me from that lifestyle. Like,
I'm so glad.
And that's the truth.
And is a souvenir of their fateful crossing here. Today, the trooper gave Waylon that battlefield-used tourniquet that he also used on Ghost. A souvenir of how their paths crossed. In St. Cloud, Rob Olson, Fox 9.
That was a much better dog story. If I could just play happy dog stories, I would. If I could just play dog stories, let's be honest, I would. But that was a much better story. That was a sweet story, very uplifting. And I am going to go ahead and wrap up. I know typically you see me sit down 12:30 to 1:30. However, Sami is not in today. So I'm going to wrap up at 12:30 so I can gear up for that 2:30 show and have some more content prepared for you for this afternoon. I know we've got a lot of big local stories. Some of you mentioned them. The mother that drowned the twins in the bathtub. It's a horrible story. We'll see who we can talk to about that. I don't know exactly who's on that story, but I know someone is. Diana Douglas is constantly in the headlines. We have a cool story today about that. So I bet we'll talk to Linda Williams. We have a firefighter that was stung by bees going through some hard times. Just a lot of stuff going on today. So we're going to get you some of those stories in the afternoon portion of the show. But I appreciate you spending your morning with me, and I will see you in just a little bit. You guys eating lunch, or I would yell for him to come up here. Will you come say hi, or do you have food in your mouth?
I will say hi.
Okay. Swallow and come say hi. He's coming. Give him 2 seconds. He's swallowing. I don't even know if I'm allowed to do this, but I'm doing it because I'm rebellious. Yes, he's coming. He has to swallow. Okay, sit here.
All right.
I'm wrapping up. I'm wrapping up, but they all wanted to say hi to you. So just
hello.
Tell everyone. I don't know. Am I allowed to do? Just tell them what is your name.
Well, my name's Mike Page, and I'm a digital journalist here. So I'll be filling in when the time is needed.
That's
excited.
Awesome. Yeah, he's like way more excited than I am. Like because I'm ready for lunch.
See, there you go.
So
I just went outside, and it is.
He prematurely fueled. He's halfway fueled on his
Yes.
lunch. So I'm going to go ahead and wrap, but you're going to be seeing, hi new guy, you're going to be seeing more of Mike, and we're really excited to have him. He's a blessing, and so everybody's going to love him, and we'll be seeing more of him throughout the week. But thank you all for watching the morning show. I'll see you this afternoon, and I'm sure I'll drag Mike up for additional harassment. Bye, guys.